From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Attorney General Merrick Garland appoints a special counsel to examine President Biden's handling of classified documents. Welcome, I'm Kyle Peterson with the Wall Street Journal. We are joined today by my colleagues, columnist Kim Strassel and editorial board member Colin Levy. Last week, after news broke that classified material had been found not only in Joe Biden's garage next to his classic Corvette, but also in his home library, Attorney General Merrick Garland announced that he would appoint a special counsel, Robert Hur, to investigate. Mr. Hur began his law career as a Supreme Court clerk for Chief Justice William Rehnquist before starting a career as a federal prosecutor. And let's start with a clip of Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer on CNN saying he supports this move.
There is a real question about transparency and what the American people deserve.
The prosecutors will get to the bottom of this, and let's let them do it, for God's sakes. I know you all want to buzz around and all of that, but
let me buzz for a minute. Okay, let me buzz for 1 minute, and I promise we'll get on to something else.
It's not just us buzzing around. You're the Democratic head of the Senate. This is a really important issue. It's not just buzzing around. This is serious stuff.
And if there were no special prosecutor, there would be, you might have a different thing to say, but there is. And now we have the law enforcement people who have the power to get all the facts out doing it. I support both. I think we should have a special prosecutor on each. I don't mind your asking these questions, but my view is I'm not going to say anything. Let the special prosecutors do their job.
On the other side of the aisle and on the other side of the Capitol, here is Speaker Kevin McCarthy saying that Congress still has a role in looking into this as well.
I think Congress has to investigate this. Here's an individual that's been in office for more than 40 years. Here's an individual that sat on 60 Minutes that was so concerned about President Trump's documents locked in behind, and now we find it just as a vice president, keeping it for years out in the open in different locations. I do not think any American believes that justice should not be equal to all.
Kim, what do you make of this appointment?
So, this, to me, those two clips that were just played shows how eager everyone is to play political football with this. Okay, I mean, Chuck Schumer might say that he supports this, but you could tell he didn't want to have any conversation about it because it's bad headlines for the White House. And the Republicans are pouncing, saying, oh, isn't this so concerning? Classified secrets and what was lost, and this is really irresponsible. My own view of this is that it is a real pity that Merrick Garland has allowed the Department of Justice to get into this situation. I mean, my God, think about this. Here we are after 2016, when the FBI and the Department of Justice wandered into two presidential races with all kinds of terrible consequences. We're right back in the same situation again, where we have a special counsel investigating the former president, a different special counsel investigating the current president, and both of these guys are likely to be presidential candidates. Donald Trump already is. So the Department of Justice is right smack in the middle of politics again. And it didn't have to be this way. All the way back when there was this dispute with Trump over his documents, had they continued to negotiate with him, maybe even gone to court to get an order for the orderly transferal of these documents back to the National Archives, this could have all been handled a lot more straightforward, and Garland wouldn't be in the position he was today. But because he escalated and because he didn't want to look as though he had two standards of justice, now we've got two more special counsels. In addition, by the way, I would say, to John Durham, another special counsel who's currently looking into the FBI's behavior from 4 years ago.
I agree with Kim here that the appointment of the first special counsel to investigate President Trump's handling of classified documents kind of backed Merrick Garland into a corner here when it came out that President Biden had also had issues handling classified documents. One question, though, is whether the special counsel is the right way to handle this. And let's listen to Merrick Garland's explanation here.
I strongly believe that the normal processes of this department can handle all investigations with integrity. But under the regulations, the extraordinary circumstances here require the appointment of a special counsel for this matter. This appointment underscores for the public the department's commitment to both independence and accountability in particularly sensitive matters, and to making decisions indisputably guided only by the facts and the law.
So one route that Merrick Garland could have taken if he believes that the Justice Department in its normal operations can conduct an investigation like this fairly is he could have not appointed a special counsel and just allowed a U.S. attorney to investigate the Trump documents and then now the Biden documents. Once he made that decision for Trump, though, it was sort of in the cards, I think, Colin, that he had to for Biden as well. And on his point about the regulations, I mean, it does say the Attorney General will appoint a special counsel when it's warranted, and that's defined as an investigation or prosecution would present a conflict of interest for the department or other extraordinary circumstances.
Yeah, Kyle, I mean, no question, to Kim's point, this is now a political morass with the Justice Department right smack in the middle of it. But there's no question as well that the way that Garland handled the timeline was very telling. You know, it was November 18th when he named Special Counsel Jack Smith to look into the Trump issues. And then we now know that it was several weeks before, it was actually November 2nd, that Mr. Garland knew that Biden had been found with the classified documents. So you have to think, I mean, just as a human, that he had to have looked at this and gone, oh my gosh, there's no way that this can be handled in any other way than to do it this way. It's just the easiest way for him probably to manage it. And, you know, as a matter of sort of process here, I think it's also important to remember that the special counsels aren't completely independent. I mean, they're still tools of the Justice Department, and they still ultimately answer to the Attorney General. You know, they're constitutional because they're part of the system. So we brought in special counsels because they're supposed to be a replacement for independent counsels that investigated Bill Clinton, investigated Ronald Reagan, his involvement in Iran-Contra, and everyone felt like those independent counsels were running on too long a leash. So we created this model. So here you have these special counsel regulations where they're supposed to consult with appropriate offices in the Justice Department, even with the Attorney General. So it's not that I think Merrick Garland is entirely off the hook here. Any indictment would have to have the approval of the Justice Department. So I think that's critical.
I think that's a key point, that special counsels are not independent counsels. And I would commend to people an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal that was published in November of 2022, back when Jack Smith was appointed by Merrick Garland to look into President Trump's documents. The headline is "Indict Trump, It's Still Merrick Garland's Decision." And the author is Rod Rosenstein, who, of course, was the Deputy Attorney General from 2017 to 2019. And he goes through, Kim, these special counsel regulations and says that the special counsel has to comply with the rules and the policies and the practices of the Justice Department. Special counsels have to notify the Attorney General in the course of an investigation if there's anything that rises to that level. The Attorney General can also overrule the special counsel if the Attorney General thinks that any action is inappropriate or unwarranted. And the Attorney General can also fire the special counsel for cause. And so, Kim, this suggests that any insulation that Merrick Garland or the public thinks that this special counsel appointment gives to these investigations is more or less a mirage. And in both of these cases, with President Trump and President Biden, ultimately, the decision of how to conclude these inquiries and whether these cases turn into charges is going to land at some point on Merrick Garland's desk.
Of course it is. And I've been really struck by the degree to which Democrats are running around saying, look how tidy this is now, and all the responsible people are in charge, and there can be no conflict of interest. That's hilarious, given people like me with some form of memory of Washington back when Bob Mueller was special counsel looking into the Trump-Russia collusion, what we now know was a hoax. And Democrats were running around worrying and wringing their hands and worrying that Bill Barr, the Attorney General, was going to overrule Bob Mueller or get in the way of his investigation. And indeed, they decided that when Bill Barr chose not to pursue some of the recommendations that the special counsel had put forward. Remember, there was a recommendation that the Department of Justice go after Trump for obstruction of justice, the howling and the complaints. And so obviously it's the case that special counsels report to the Attorney General and that there is authority greater than them, and that the AG has immense ability to influence their work or overrule them or make decisions. And everybody out there in America knows this, which is why I think, again, it's such a terrible idea that we've ended up with these special counsels, because everybody sees through this fiction. And now what ends up coming down the pike is that if you end up with, let's say, the Department of Justice indicts Donald Trump, is anyone on the Republican side really going to believe that politics wasn't at play there? Similarly, if it ends up exonerating Joe Biden, is anyone going to think that politics wasn't at play there? And this is just terrible for the Department of Justice, which still is suffering under the damage to its reputation from prior actions. And this is not going to help at all.
But I wonder if this might be the beginning of the end for this special counsel process. And there used to be an independent counsel law in the United States. It lapsed in 1999 after both the Republican Party and the Democratic Party had gotten a taste of being on the wrong end of it and decided that it gave this independent counsel too much running room. And I'm curious whether we will get to a point where we end up in the same conversation about these special counsel regulations, Colin, because here you have an attorney general who is ostensibly handing these cases off to these special counsels. The special counsels are it's pitched as if this is independent, but it's not. And so you're weakening the political accountability in the Justice Department. And here we have another case where you have special counsels on the Democratic side and on the Republican side operating more or less at the same time. And maybe we will get to the end of this and conclude that no more special counsels is the best path forward.
Yeah, I think that's entirely possible and maybe a preferable outcome. There's no question facing off the two special counsels simultaneously is going to be something like a sport, I think, for people to watch it. I think the big thing to watching the media and the left react to the Biden documents has really been informative. You have everyone now sort of seeking to exonerate President Biden. There's so much eagerness, I think, on the left to draw distinctions between what President Biden did here when he was storing the boxes in his garage next to his Corvette and whatever humor everyone's getting out of that, and what President Trump was doing. The big thing here, I think, is that everyone's saying, well, look, President Biden says his team rushed to turn in the documents and took the initiative to seek other locations and to find more documents. And this somehow makes the situation completely different than President Trump's situation where there was more obstruction or runaround. And okay, that's great. That's obviously preferable to the alternative. But I think we also have to remember here that the Biden administration was well aware of the political environment and how the comparative handling would play out. So I think we should be careful about getting too busy about drawing halos over their heads just for turning over the documents. You have a situation now where nothing like this has happened before. You have president and a former president who are accused of recklessly mishandling classified information. So for better or for worse, this is a president that's answering and providing documents to his own Justice Department. So I don't know why there would ever be any delay.